Yeah, now Open mHealth, that sounds like it primarily, and from looking at the website, it primarily focuses on open source for mobile technology. Is that correct?
Not really. So Open mHealth is a nonprofit organization, and our objective is to break down the barriers between mobile data and mobile app integration.
Okay.
And what we are is an open architecture, and the way to think about that is we're the specifications for how people can build their apps in such a way that they can talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's a way of programming, it's a way of building systems. So it's not an app, it's not a set of standards in the sense of an HL7 kind of set of standards. We don't build apps. We're not a service for building apps.
Right.
We are a way that apps can be built that will be defined really jointly by the community. So we offer a way for people to sort of speak together in the same language. That's what it is. So it's very abstract. I guess one way to think about it is we're sort of the middleware, the software middleware. Another analogy would be think of the internet. Has the internet protocol TCP/IP, right? Everybody uses TCP/IP to send things around. Well, TCP/IP it's just a set of specifications. It's not an app. It's not a software. It's just a set of specifications. Everybody uses it. That is kind of the product, and then the IETF, right? The Internet Engineering Task Force is this independent group that kind of has sprung up to oversee and govern and further develop the internet standards. So Open mHealth as a nonprofit organization is kind of like IETF, and the Open mHealth architecture is kind of like TCP/IP.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Now, when you're talking about programming languages for mobile, you're primarily talking a couple of different programming languages like iOS. You're talking Android, HTML5. Now, does this plug into those, or as kind of a way of like maybe best practices? If I were to go and kind of water it down, best practices, and take those programming languages and plug them into this, or is it a whole new programming language?
It's not a programming language.
Yeah.
Just like TCP/IP is not a programming language, and I don't know what your technical background is. iOS and Android are platforms. Right, they're things. They're systems within which apps run, and we really don't care whether it's iOS or OS 10 or whatever. Okay, it doesn't really matter, and it also doesn't matter what the programming language is, whether it's HTML5, whether it's Java, whether it's whatever you want to use, Python. It doesn't matter. Okay, and all the startups make their own decisions about what programming language they use. Okay, what we do is to focus on probably the most important part of getting a coherent, integrated mHealth system is two fundamental things. How do we exchange data? And how can I reuse your code in a way that is easy? Okay. And there are lots of approaches that kind of, so open source is about reusing code. Pieces, programming modules, okay? And there, you do need to think about, what programming language you're using and stuff like that. So that's typical open source. And we're open source because we're, we don't want to hold on to our IP and our products, okay?
Right.
That's why we're open source. But we're not fundamentally about open source, because you can be open source, and in fact you see a lot of these examples of that. You can be open source, but if there's no coherent in the programming, it doesn't matter. It's like saying that all the books in the library are free, but the books are written in different languages. Well, it's free, but it's not terribly helpful to me, right?
Right, yeah.
So open source in and of itself is not that important. What's important is that there's an open standard that everybody can partake of and use. So the fact that we all, speak English and can read English, that's our open approach. The open source is the fact we can get the book free from the library. Right? So those are separate concepts. So you've got your platform, you've got your programming language. You can choose whichever and however you want to do it. But when it comes to exchanging data and calling on code, then we need to have a common way of talking. Okay, so let's say that you're Fitbit, and you have a bunch of data, and you have all that data up in the cloud. Okay, and it's heart rate, distance, activity, all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm building a fantastic app that's going to help patients manage their, depression. I don't know. And, let's just pick depression, okay? And I want to be able to incorporate your activity level, okay? Now, what can I do as a startup company? I can say, well, activity level, well, there are all these little sensor activity things, and so, Fitbit is a big one, so I'll work on building a way to get data out of Fitbit. So then I have to figure out Fitbit's API, right? And I have to write specific code to pull data out of Fitbit. And if I get a heart rate, is it average heart rate over 1 minute? Is it activity level? Is that like how long it takes to walk a mile, or how many miles they walked, or is it how many miles they walked per 24 hours, or from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.? Like, what exactly is the data they have? I need to figure all that out, right? Well, that's only Fitbit. But if I'm trying to sell to a mass market, I can't be selling only to people who are depressed who use Fitbit, right?
Right.
Maybe they're using, Jawbone. Maybe they're using Runkeeper. Maybe they're using, all the other ones that have been showing at CES. Well, what do I do? As a startup company, do I spend all my time simply building interfaces, is the programming term, for getting data out of all of these different data sources?
Right.
Well, there goes my entire investment and my 2 staff, right?
That's what my concern is as well.
So what mHealth does is to start this process of saying, we all need to get heart rate out of the clouds. We need to get activity out of the clouds. The example I'm using right now, just because it's the most simple, is fasting glucose. Okay, if I need to get fasting glucose out of all the glucometer companies that are out there, do I need to find out how to get fasting glucose out of Agrimatrix, and then I have to find out how to get it out of Telcare, and I have to get it out of Entra. What a waste! It's just fasting glucose. So we have a way of making what we call a read call. It is simple, simple programming language that everybody knows called JSON. Okay, and you can use JSON even if you're using HTML5, if you're using Python, whatever. You can make a JSON call. It's just a way to call a different system. So I'll make a JSON call to, under our specifications, an mHealth specification, hey, Runkeeper, I'm so-and-so, this is what I need. I need to read data from you, and I need to read something called fasting glucose, and the preferred mHealth way of calling fasting glucose is this, and so I'm going to, this is what I want. This is my order. And because it's a standardized order, then Runkeeper says, oh yeah, I know how to handle mHealth orders. And I see that, for the mHealth order sheet, fasting glucose lines up to this, so here's your thing. There you go. Just go away. Don't, leave me alone. Yeah. Right? And then I can go to, Jawbone, and I can go to Entra, and I can just get that without having to build, different interfaces to each of those groups. And that's really where the real win is. Because as a startup or as any large company, you cannot spend all your time building, if there are N different sources, as we call it, right? If there are 10 different sources, data sources, you can't be building 10 different ways of getting information out of them. And then the 11th come around, and you not need to build to 11. Then by the time this one has gone out of business, and so now you spend all the time doing that, and it's gone. And by the way, your patients aren't using, your customers aren't using it anyway.
Right, yeah.
They're actually using this one, and then you can't, that's chasing your tail.
You can't keep up on top of it. You would have to have a full-time team
just to do that.
Just to go and keep up on top of everything, because everybody right now is working inside of kind of a bubble.
Yeah, everyone's
and there's all these little bubbles.
Yeah, and so what we want to do is we want to say the part of your bubble that is duplicative, that is this unnecessary, idiosyncratic one-off kind of data integration overhead. We want to pull that out and make a commons out of it and have a common strategy. All the stuff that should be in your own bubble is the stuff that only you can do. It's the special stuff for your company. Whether it's a neat algorithm, whether it's a neat interface, whether it's a neat business partnership, that's the stuff you should focus on. You shouldn't be focusing on this other stuff. It should be kind of pulled into this commons that we kind of build an infrastructure to make that stuff as easy as possible. So you can just do it, get over with it, If you need glucose data, fine, build it into your code to call glucose, and it doesn't matter what cloud's from, you can get that data. Now you can focus on what you're going to do with it. right? That's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to do, and so that's that's a critical function for the mHealth ecosystem. Critical for it to happen if we're really going to get to where we want mHealth to be, right? To really improve health. And, so the first thing I think is recognizing the problem, framing the problem in a way that's tractable, as opposed to, everybody needs to build their systems the same way, store the data the same way, and everybody must share the data. Well, that's not really, that'd be great. That would get us to the goal, but that's not really solving the problem in the right way. It's not framing the problem in the right way. So we frame our problem as how to establish technical standards so that people can share data and be clear about what they're sharing, and to be confident about the what we call the semantics, the meaning of the data that's being shared. Okay, and of course there's authentication and stuff like that on top of it. And then very closely related to that is ways to invoke or call reusable software modules that will use the data. Okay, and there are people who just work on data integration. So that's health information exchange, for example. You hear in the health IT space. There are people who work on reusable modules, so that's open source. But it's really the combination of the two together that's really, really important. And so that's the problem that we've defined. The functional solution to that problem, I think, is critical for the mHealth ecosystem. The other thing that a couple other things that distinguish our approach to this whole problem. One is defining it in that way, and number two is we're taking this open architecture approach, and we take a very particular approach, which is that we are not imposing standards from on high. So there are lots of different groups who do it differently, right? In the health IT space, it's here's HL7, here's CCD, here's how you're all going to do it, and they kind of specified everything. If you're going to share an electronic health record, this is the whole format. Everyone's going to use this. It just doesn't work very well, because that standard is it's right for nobody, right? Because everyone has different needs. It's too much for some people. It's too little for other people. It gets at the wrong things for some people, and it's not at all detailed enough for. Especially the health record models, they're not detailed enough for what we do in mHealth. It's not really atomic level, individual pieces of data that we need to drive really personalized care. It's like, here's your document, It's like, okay, I have my health record as a document. How is that useful for my mobile phone that's so personal to me, with my rewards and my, posts and things like that. It's just a mismatch of information elements, right?
Yeah.
So I think, one approach then is to kind of dogmatically come in and say, we are going to define a standard and impose it on everyone. If everyone uses it, then fine, that would be great. But, we know in health IT that approach really doesn't work.
Right.
It really doesn't work.
A lot of times when I see new standards come up, it's somebody comes up with a standard and then people start gravitating towards it. I very rarely ever see it pushed on anybody. Yeah,
pushing doesn't work.
Right. They come up with a standard or best practices, and then people start gravitating towards that if they like what they saw.
If they like what they saw, so the question then is, well, what do you dangle in front of them, right?
Yeah.
You can
what's the benefit for them?
Yeah, you could. There are a couple ways to go think about it. One is, here's a model, use it. Okay. Whether you want to know, if you want to play, you got to use it, and that just doesn't work. People just don't participate; they just find other ways around it, right? You can dangle some model and say, "Hey, come and play," and some people gravitate, but most people probably won't, because if what you're dangling is kind of like a CCD for a health record interchange, for example, you have to have the incentive structure around it, and you have to really understand why people would want to interchange, and this is the thing that really meets their needs. Okay, in mHealth, the use cases are so diverse that I think it's in the health record space. It's reasonably okay to say, well, you want the major things coming out of a health record, and here's the document. And most people can say, okay, I can start with that, And of course, with meaningful use, I get money for it, so yeah, I'll do it, okay? But in mobile health, I don't think there's that commonality. And so for everyone to say, for us to dangle some general model, for mHealth, that everybody will use these standards that carefully define all the data and what data is to be exchanged and how, that's a standard we can dangle. I don't think anyone would come. There will be a few people coming, but it won't be the masses of people coming. So what we think is that from what we've seen in health IT, what we've seen from what works in the internet space, mindful of developer communities, how software generally takes off, is you want very lightweight standards that allow people to do what they want to do right away, to sort of their immediate needs, and it makes it reasonably easy for them to take one additional step to become more standardized. So you're not asking people to be standardized from the get-go. And then, after you're standardized, then you can meet your company's needs. It's the other way around. It's like, meet your company's needs, and if you can do it in a standardized way, here's a really easy way to do it. Because people will say, I can meet my company's needs.
If it's easy, then people gravitate a little bit more.
Then people gravitate, right? So like, okay, I can meet my company's needs, but my company's needs this quarter is this, but I know my company's needs in 2 to 3 years, or next quarter, I guess that's the horizon, is that the whole mHealth ecosystem be a little bit more effective and efficient. And if the whole ecosystem is more effective and efficient, I trust my company to be able to compete in that. And so I actually want the ecosystem to be effective, right? You can choose, well, if I'm going to be playing the mHealth ecosystem, do I want it to be one of all these one-off companies that don't ever add up to anything? And that's how I'm going to make my money. That's the kind of competition I want. Or do you say, I want to compete in an mHealth ecosystem that's coherent, integrated, actually improves outcomes for people. We're all working to that. And in that space, I'm going to compete and I'm going to do really well. And so you just have to think as a business, well, which ecosystem would you want to play in? As a person, which ecosystem do you want to play in? And so then you think, okay, for my company strategy, for the short term, I'll build without caring about anything else. But maybe if I can just do a little bit more, I will actually get a lot back because I'm helping the ecosystem to be integrated and coherent. And maybe for this particular thing that I need to do, some other company last quarter has already contributed something and I can reuse it. And for that, then maybe I'll do something, and maybe some other company next quarter will use what I'm doing, and then I can reuse it again, and maybe 3 quarters down the line, we're all much further ahead.
It's like the Linux community.
Exactly.
I'm big on Linux, and one of the great things about Linux is that I can easily just go and search for something, and I can find an open source product that's probably a lot better than the one that I can pay for, mainly because of the big community that's involved in building all the different little pieces for something. So even with something as simple with Linux as OpenOffice, which is a competitor to Microsoft Office. The only thing is it doesn't have an email program in there. So that's the only thing it's missing. But for that you have, I think it's called Evolution. And with that particular product, it's much better than their word processor is much better than Word, mainly because the only formats I can save Word in is just what Microsoft wants me to allow me to save in. But with the open source, I can save it in any format that I want. I can make tons of different types of changes. There's always additions that are being added onto it. It's an incredible product. Now, with that, the carrot that was dangled in front of Linux, as far as the whole community, is an operating system with little or no cost. And that's still the main advantage, and that's why you still see a lot of companies, they want somebody with Linux knowledge when they're talking about the data centers and all.
So I think, we take inspiration from Linux, Eclipse, Apache, there are all these examples in the software world where it's just a given that that's a viable way to go. It's not a given in health IT because health IT, I think, is a very different model of software development. Is much more sort of client-server monolithic systems. That's been the tradition, and I think we are, we're trying to introduce, ways of work that are very common and very successful in sort of other software into health software, which is a little different. And mHealth is a good space because it's a combination of both. It's kind of like the wild and woolly software world, but it's also health IT, which is very different. And it's also new enough that, coming in with a new way of doing things like this, I think has the possibility of success. Whereas coming into the electronic health record space, which is owned by large companies who do things like this, you know, and say, hey, let's go open. You know, it hasn't really worked, right? Like Vista and so forth. So that's kind of not, that's kind of going too much against the grain. Whereas in mHealth, I think there's traction, certainly. Recognition of the problem, traction. We've talked to a lot of startup companies that see the vision and want to be part of the vision, and then also larger companies. So I'll tell you something, if you will embargo it. Can I do that?
Yeah, sure.
We will be making an announcement on May 30th at the Wireless Life Sciences Alliance Convergence Summit next Thursday. So I'm on the panel. It's the panel at the very end of the conference. So the conference, in some sense, leads up to us. This is WLSA being very supportive of our work. So we're kind of the anchor. We're the anchor panel for the conference. I'm the moderator. We will be having on the panel Kaiser, Continua, as you know, one of the big standards alliance for devices. Qualcomm, as part of Qualcomm Life and their 2Net hub, and then a company called Welz, which is a company that's integrating social media and devices and personal health care as a service for health plans and for health care organizations. And so these four groups are going to be on the panel with us, and we're announcing something called the Catalyst Initiative, where we have 8 partners, possibly 9, from across the whole spectrum. So those 4 plus Ginger.io, it's a startup company. Cal IT2 is Larry Smarr's group down at San Diego, is the research organization. We have a company called Food Care. We have Entra, which is a glucometer company. So we have companies from across the spectrum, you know, tech to health, right? Small company, large company, academic research. And it's a, you know, we're all coming together to say they are committed to using Open mHealth in one way or another. Okay, they're going to use it to read data. They're going to use it to expose data. They're working together. They want to show as a group that there's a there, and it's really our way to catalyze the whole community. We've got loads of other people who want to work with us, but it's sort of on a one-off thing, and it's like, well, who's going to move first? So this is the Catalyst Initiative, and so, you know, it's really to say we're at that point now. You know, now we've got major players coming and say, yeah, we're behind this. You know, and now we can start that tipping so that you know, you're not the only one building code for yourself, right? It's the community. So that's what we need. And actually, you know, talking to people like you is very important, because we need to get this out there to get people to see, yeah, you know, I can see how this makes sense, even though I need to, you know, ship my code, you know, by the end of May. This still makes sense for me. Maybe not this week, but maybe next quarter. And as I do my development, why should I build another one-off API to Fitbit when everyone else is doing the same thing? You know, that's going to have to go to Fitbit and Jawbone and whatever. Okay. So TickTrack, we're talking to, they may or may not be a partner in time for us, but they certainly need all that data integrated. That's what they're doing. And now they can do it. They can make a business out of it. They can say, well, don't, you know, Open mHealth, go away. We're the ones who's going to do the integration, and we'll make money out of it by owning that problem. But actually, they don't want to do that because they know that they're not going to be successful doing that. You know, they'll never catch up. They'll never keep up. Eventually, they'll just, you know, go away because they can't keep up with the integration needs. So partnering with us to have an open ecosystem allows us to focus on what they think is their strong suit, which is the visualization and the user experience, and they don't have to deal with all this integration stuff. And so I think we'll see more and more companies seeing that as part of their business strategy, and from that, the developers will, you know, sort of get the direction to use Open mHealth and to contribute to it because it makes business sense for them. And then it makes, you know, good sense for us overall, and then it meets, you know, what are our goals, which is a more effective mHealth ecosystem. And that's why we're a nonprofit. We're not in it to make money. We're in it to make sure the ecosystem works. We want to be a neutral partner so that people can partner in such a way that other people make money. It's very important that other people make money. But we don't need to. We are in that space of being a broker and being that neutral platform where we can all be more successful together.
Now you're primarily a physician, right?
I don't know what I primarily am. I am a physician. I have a clinic in an hour and a bit. I'm a primary care doctor. So I see, you know, I'm a general practitioner. I see all problems, adult patients. And I'm very much concerned and interested in chronic disease management, because that's fundamentally what's going on in our society, and in wellness as well. But in a way that's very situated in how people live. right? It's not like, I'm not an ultra specialist where people come with one problem, I fix the problem, then they go on with their lives, right? Yeah. I'm there with them, patients I've had for 13, 14 years now.
Yeah, because so it's rare that I find somebody that's from the medical field that's as knowledgeable as you are in software technology and development practices and all. And I was just wondering how those two merged together.
Yeah, and that's part of why it's been so frustrating to see what's going on. I think the people who do have a lot of the insight into the problem, the healthcare problem, don't have enough of the technical knowledge. Or you have enough technical knowledge to buy or participate in kind of the dominant way of doing things, which really isn't going to get us where we need to go. A lot of people who have a lot of technical knowledge don't really understand health and don't understand the complexities of health and the health system. So in addition to my informatics work, which I have a PhD from Stanford in informatics, and most of my research is in informatics and computer science areas. But I also have done stuff in health policy and health systems, so I know how how the system gets paid and what it incentives and what quality is, and I also do clinical research, so I know clinical methods. I know a whole bunch of things. Yeah. And it's really the combination of all those things together that now allow me to see, how do we really make mHealth more successful? Yeah. Right? Because it's not just a technical solution, it's not just healthcare, but it's also health systems, and it's also business, because that all has to fit together. Yeah,
because what you're saying is, it kind of goes back to what I originally said when I was talking about healthtechvision.com, my website, which I see a lot of technical companies trying to develop stuff for the medical industry, or the health industry, but they don't have any medical knowledge. Yeah. And then I see the physicians want to develop something, but they don't know
clueless,
how to. Yeah. So really it's okay not to know everything.
Yeah,
right?
It's
okay not
absolutely
to. But the unfortunate thing is I see a lot of them being taken advantage of.
Yes. And so at UCSF we have a new center now, Center for Digital Health Innovation. We're going to try and broker those a little more so that it's not so uneven. And I think it's incumbent upon all groups to learn more about each other. So, I work with a lot of faculty here, obviously, and trying to, educate them in some of these issues. Not that they're ever going to be expert at it, just like the tech people are never going to be expert in health. But being able to talk to each other is really important, and being able to be open and understand the problems from each other's perspective is very important. But I think we can't just leave it to independent groups to do that. I think as a system we need a way of working, a way of developing in mHealth where, it's just easier to do things the right way. And that's part of what Open mHealth is about. How do we make it easy for people, as they're doing what they're doing, to, add up so that we're all more than the sum of our parts? That's what we're really trying to do.